All this working with watercolour paint and ink has been so much fun over the last week that I just can't let it go yet. If you saw my video on Wednesday, you'll have seen that I used watercolour paint and Indian ink on synthetic paper Yupo. It was totally fun and you get some really amazing textures on the Yupo surface. Well, today I'm back to watercolour paper for this floral project, and for this piece I thought I'd work up one of my Inktober shares. So I did this sketch in fine line marker on day 18, so only a couple of days ago, and I wanted to work it up and see what else I could do with it. And I thought I'd share the results and the process to encourage you guys to maybe work up some of your Inktober sketches, or perhaps if you haven't been doing Inktober, some other sketches you've been doing, or even some of the doodles you've been working with. It's totally fun to take a sketch or a motif and swap it about a bit, try it on different surfaces, try it on different backgrounds and see where you can take it. So for my piece today I'm using Indian ink again, but this time I'm using a dip pen. I really love how dip pens look, but I have to admit I don't feel as in control of a dip pen as I do with a fine line marker pen. This just could be down to the fact that I don't use it quite as much, so I need a lot more practice, but there's also a little bit of serendipity. You're not entirely sure exactly how much ink you've got in the nib, but I think again with practice you probably get used to that and sort of work that out a little bit better. Anyway, I thought it'd be fun to just get a little bit more practice with it and to see how these flowers looked with the dip pen. I'm using the Daniel Smith watercolours, and I've got a couple of packs of these. They're like the tester packs, and it's the Primatek set and the Essentials set. And I love the Primatek set as it's got some really great colours, and some of them are very nicely granulated, so you get these really lovely granulation textures. That's basically where the pigment kind of comes out of solution and sits on your paper surface. So if you're using something like a cold press paper like I'm using with the rough surface, that granulation will sit into those dips on the surface and just add an extra layer of texture to the picture. So that's something else I wanted to have a little play with, because I have to admit I haven't had time to really give them a good test and see how they work, so I thought that would be perfect for this. You'll also notice that I haven't stretched my watercolour paper or taped it down to a board or anything like that. I've just kind of done the wash and gone with it as it is. It's a very heavy weight paper, so you know the buckling won't be quite as bad, and also this is just a play piece, so I'm not intending to frame it or anything like that. The most I might possibly do is scan it into a computer, as I think this design might be fun to work in a digital context as well, so I think that's next on my list for this particular project. So what are you going to do with your latest sketch or doodle? Has this kind of inspired you to think of a new way of using it? Or perhaps something different to what you've been doing recently? I would love to hear, so please do let me know, and I think as a community it would be great to just share that inspiration with each other. And also I just love to hear what you guys are up to creatively, so do tell. So for my part I have some art journal pages planned for some more of my recent sketches, and also some more digital work as well, and maybe some surface designs that I'm working on, but I'm sure I will share all the results with you as they come. If my hand looks as if it's sort of like dotting around the surface quite a lot, it's mainly because I'm just being really careful not to smudge my lines. This ink does dry quite quickly on the surface of the watercolour paper, but still, I mean, the potential of being able to smear black everywhere is quite high. The other thing I'm super paranoid about is knocking over my ink bottle, so that's why I tend to put the lid back on every time after I've dipped my dip pen in. Once I've finished up the last leaves in the design, then I'm just going to let the ink dry completely, and it won't take too long before it is pretty much dry, because I want to add some more texture to this piece. It is kind of like a mixed media piece, the watercolour, the ink, but also I'm just going to share with you a technique for adding in just a little bit more interest into the background once you've done the main drawing. So I have a piece of magic sponge, which is an abrasive sponge that can lift off dry watercolour paint from paper, and I've got a whole product test video on this sponge if you're interested, and I've linked it up in the cards and below in the description as well if you want to know more. If I wet the sponge and carefully dab it through the Punchinella, then I can add some interesting effects to this piece. It's just a great way, and also an easy way as well, of making those flowers just pop out a little bit more from that background. And in my usual sort of cavalier way, I'm not being that careful, but if you really wanted to make sure that you didn't overlap into your flower sketches, then mask them off first with just a piece of paper, put a Punchinella over the top, and then you should be able to work right up to the edge of the flower sketches without having to worry about them. In this close-up you can see some of that granulation that I was talking about with the watercolour paint, and you can see the texture that you get from the magic sponge, and those lovely lines that you get with that dip pen. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do give it a thumbs up, that would be fantastic, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd love to have you on board. Have fun creating, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, bye!